Take that patch off before someone mistakes you for a man who earned it. Cadet Ethan Rourke's voice cut across the memorial hall and stopped every conversation within 30 feet. Walter Mercer did not turn. He stood beneath a wall of polished black stone, studying 6 names filled with silver. Winter light came through the high windows and rested across his white hair, his narrow shoulders, and the faded field jacket he had worn into places that no official map had ever acknowledged. On the jacket's left sleeve was an old cloth patch. The black shield had faded almost gray. A broken compass sat in the center. 7 dim stars surrounded it. The modern Nightwatch crest on Ethan's shoulder carried only 6. "I am speaking to you, sir," Ethan said. Walter finally looked at him. His eyes were pale, clear, and steady. "I heard you." The calm answer irritated Ethan more than an argument would have. At 22, Ethan had already built a reputation for precision. His uniform was exact. His shoes carried a mirror shine. He had been selected to lead the cadet detail protecting the Nightwatch Heritage Ceremony that morning, and he treated the assignment as if the history of the unit rested on his shoulders. Senior officers were arriving. Families were taking their seats. In less than an hour, the command would unveil a new memorial honoring the 6 men recognized as Nightwatch's founders. To Ethan, the old man's patch was not a harmless mistake. It was an insult inside sacred ground. "The official crest has 6 stars, Ethan said. "That one has 7. The compass is wrong. The stitching is wrong. There is no record of that version ever being authorized." Walter glanced at his sleeve. It was not counterfeit when it was made. A few cadets slowed near the entrance. One of them raised a telephone, pretending to check a message while pointing the camera toward the confrontation. Ethan extended his hand. "Remove it." Walter returned his attention to the wall. Daniel Cross, Michael Harlan, Robert Kane, Joseph Webb, Thomas Avery, Walter Mercer. Then nothing. A clean strip of black stone waited beneath the final name. "You are missing one," Walter said. Ethan followed his gaze. This wall was verified by command. Command was not there. Ethan's jaw tightened. Wearing an unauthorized unit insignia on this installation can be treated as stolen valor. "I am asking you one final time." Walter looked at Ethan's modern crest. Its broken compass was perfectly embroidered. 6 silver stars surrounded it with machine precision. "You earned that?" Walter asked. "Yes, sir." "Then protect it carefully." "That is what I am doing." "No," Walter's voice remained quiet. "You are protecting what you know." Ethan stepped closer. "And you are claiming history that belongs to better men." For the first time, something changed in Walter's face. It was not anger. It was the look of a man hearing a grave disturbed. He raised one hand. "Do not touch the patch." Ethan took the warning as defiance. He caught the edge of the cloth between 2 fingers. "You do not get to wear our history." Walter's voice dropped. "Then you should know better than to tear it." Ethan pulled. The old thread snapped. The sound was small, dry, and brittle, but it carried through the marble hall like a branch breaking in winter. The patch came free. A single black thread remained looped around Walter's finger. His hand trembled once. Only once. Ethan turned the patch over, expecting a surplus store label or fresh backing. Instead, he found a second layer of fabric folded beneath the first. A 7th silver star had been hidden inside. Below it, stitched by hand, was a short code. N07. Ethan's confidence faltered. Walter stared at the exposed markings. "There it is," he whispered. "The part they buried." A woman's voice came from the archive desk at the far end of the hall. "Cadet, put that patch on the table." Captain Claire Bennett crossed the floor with the controlled urgency of someone who knew that panic damaged evidence faster than age. She served as Fort Granger's command historian and custodian of the Nightwatch Heritage Collection. She had been arranging documents for the ceremony when Ethan's first accusation drew her attention. Now her eyes were fixed on the torn seam. Ethan held the patch out. "Captain, I believe this is counterfeit." Claire did not take her eyes from the fabric. "And I believe you may have just torn an artifact older than this command." The cadets around them went silent. Claire placed the patch beneath a small archival lamp. She examined the thread, the backing, and the uneven handwork around the compass. "This is oxidized silver wire," she said. "Not modern synthetic thread. The backing is parachute cloth. Early pattern." Ethan folded his arms. "That does not prove he wore it." "No," Claire said. "It proves you should have asked before pulling." Walter had already turned back toward the 6 names. He carried a worn brown envelope beneath one arm. It was creased at the corners and soft from years of handling. Claire noticed it. "What did you bring, Mr. Mercer?" Walter set the envelope on the memorial table, something that should have arrived before the stone. He opened it and removed a bent identification tag. The metal had lost its shine decades earlier. Its edges were smooth from being held and returned to the envelope thousands of times. Claire read the stamped name, Samuel A. Pike. Ethan looked toward the wall. There is no Samuel Pike in the Nightwatch archive. Walter placed the tag beneath the 6 silver names. "That is why I came." A small murmur passed through the watching cadets. Ethan looked from the tag to Walter's name on the memorial. "A name on this wall does not prove you are the same Walter Mercer." Walter faced him again. "What would prove it?" "An official service record. A verified photograph. Something that exists outside your story." Walter removed a photograph from the envelope. 7 young men stood beside an unmarked transport aircraft under a hard white sun. Their uniforms carried no visible ranks or names. Each man wore a small black shield below the left pocket. Claire counted them. Then she counted again. 7. Ethan studied the photograph. "There is no date, no location, no unit marking. We were told not to leave any," Walter said. "That is convenient." Several cadets looked away. Walter did not react. He had heard harsher words from frightened men, ambitious men, and men trying to make sense of orders that did not deserve to exist. He looked at Ethan for a long moment. "You think I came here to borrow respect? I think symbols matter." "So do I." "Then you understand why I cannot accept a story without proof." Walter's eyes moved to Ethan's perfect crest. "I buried men under the first version of that patch." The hall seemed to contract around them. Ethan swallowed, but he did not step back. His anger had not begun that morning. When he was 14, his father's military career had ended under an investigation. Records had been altered. Awards had been claimed that had never been earned. Neighbors stopped visiting. His mother removed framed photographs from the living room. Ethan learned early that false honor could poison a family long after the truth arrived. "People use symbols to take respect they did not earn," he said. "I have seen what happens when nobody challenges them." Walter's expression softened by the smallest degree. Not pity, understanding. "Then challenge carefully." Claire lifted the patch under the lamp. "There is something inside the seam." Using a blunt archival tool, she opened the damaged fold without cutting another thread. A brittle square of treated paper appeared between the layers. Part of an authorization seal remained visible. Claire drew a slow breath. This predates the standardized Nightwatch crest. Ethan stepped closer despite himself. "How can you tell?" "The seal format. The paper treatment. The field stitching." She looked at Walter. "What was Nightwatch 0? Walter did not answer immediately. The silver thread under Claire's lamp caught the light, and the memorial hall slipped away. The low ventilation hum became rotor blades turning beyond canvas walls. The winter brightness became the dark red glow of a field lamp. Walter was 24 again. 7 young men sat inside a tent pitched on ground their orders refused to name. Their uniforms carried no insignia. Their aircraft had no markings. Their mission packet contained coordinates, but no unit designation. Samuel Pike sat on an overturned supply box with a needle between his fingers. He was thin, sharp-eyed, and incapable of taking anything seriously for more than 30 seconds. "This may be the ugliest patch in the United States military," Samuel said. Daniel Cross laughed from the other side of the tent. "Good. Nobody will steal it." Walter took the cloth and stitched a broken compass into its center. Samuel studied the design. "A compass that does not point anywhere. We go places that are not on maps," Walter said. Samuel nodded. "Then it is perfect." Around the compass, they added 7 stars. One for every man in the tent. Samuel folded the final star beneath the backing. Walter looked at him. "Why hide it?" "Inspection," Samuel said. "The officers approving this arrangement want a 6-man field team. They do not want to explain the 7th. The radio operator? The man who makes the other 6 possible." Samuel pressed the patch into Walter's hand. "Someday, some young officer will say this version never existed." Walter smiled. "What do we tell him?" Samuel's grin disappeared. "Tell him records are written by the people who come home." The rotor sound faded. Walter stood beneath the memorial again. His hand rested beside Samuel's identification tag. Claire had entered the authorization number into a heritage terminal disconnected from the public archive. The system did not display a dramatic warning. It simply stopped responding for several seconds. Then a single line appeared. Origin index located. Claire straightened. This index should have been retired decades ago. Ethan looked at the screen. How many records? Claire opened the file. 7 blank personnel fields appeared. 6 contained references to later Nightwatch service files. The 7th carried no public name, only a notation. Identity withheld pending recovery review. Walter read the words without blinking. Claire looked at him. They never closed the review. They closed the operation, Walter said. That was easier. What happened to Pike? Walter looked toward the high windows. Outside, range flags snapped in the wind. He stayed behind. The room remained quiet. Walter did not describe gunfire. He did not describe the men hunting them or the route they had taken through a mountain valley during a storm. He remembered smaller things. Rain running from Samuel's sleeves. A field radio held together with tape. A damaged aircraft waiting beyond a tree line with one engine turning. Samuel sitting against a rock because one leg could no longer carry him. The extraction team had 7 men and space for 7. Tom did not. The radio beacon had to remain active until the aircraft cleared the valley. If it stopped transmitting too early, the pilots would lose their route through the weather. Samuel understood before the others did. He removed his identification tag and pressed it into Walter's palm. No, Walter said. You wrote the rule, Samuel answered. No one left uncounted. That is why you have to count me. We can carry you. If you carry me, the beacon dies. If the beacon dies, none of us leave. Walter remembered kneeling in the rain, trying to find an argument that could defeat arithmetic. Samuel handed him a sealed letter. My sister is named Margaret. She thinks I repair radios in Germany. You are going to tell her yourself. Samuel gave him the same crooked smile he had worn while sewing the patch. Then hold it for me. The aircraft crew called from the trees. The weather was closing. Samuel caught Walter by the sleeve and pulled the patch close. Take the boys home, Compass. Walter placed his hand over Samuel's. I will come back. I know. It was the kindness of the answer that followed Walter for the next 56 years. The team left. The beacon remained alive for 11 minutes. Long enough. When another recovery element returned 3 days later, the position was empty. No body. No radio. No official casualty report. Only a classified note stating that the 7th identity would remain withheld until the operation could be acknowledged. It never was. Back in the memorial hall, Walter opened his hand. The bent tag had left a pale mark across his palm. I waited until the secrecy order expired, he said. Then I waited for someone willing to correct the record. Claire looked at the clock. 28 minutes remained before the ceremony. She opened a secure line to Legacy Command and transmitted 4 items. The patch. The field authorization. The photograph. Samuel Pike's identification tag. A records officer answered with the weary tone of someone expecting another ceremonial request. Then Claire read the code. Nightwatch 07. The line went silent. A keyboard sounded in the distance. Repeat the designation, the officer said. N07 authorized. The officer's voice changed. Do not disconnect. The call transferred once. Not through 5 departments. Not through a parade of officials. Once. A man identified himself as Colonel David Sloan, Director of Legacy Command. Who initiated the search? Captain Claire Bennett, Fort Granger. And Walter James Mercer is physically present? Claire turned toward Walter. Yes, sir. Colonel Sloan exhaled. Our index reports that Walter Mercer died in 1998. Walter stepped close enough for the speaker to carry his voice. That report was convenient. The colonel did not answer for several seconds. Mr. Mercer, I need the origin phrase. Walter looked at the 6 names. Then at the empty space beneath them. No map. No credit. No one left uncounted. A chair moved sharply on the other end of the call. Hold the ceremony, Sloan ordered. Do not remove Mr. Mercer. Do not alter the patch. I am releasing the origin file to General Hale now. Ethan lowered his eyes. Walter noticed. He said nothing. In the main auditorium, General Thomas Hale stood behind a podium reviewing the speech he had planned to deliver. At 62, Hale had spent most of his adult life inside Nightwatch. He had commanded its field teams, rebuilt its selection program, and taught its first-year cadets from manuals whose original author had never been publicly named. The ceremony screen behind him changed from the Nightwatch seal to a secure document header. A name appeared: Walter James Mercer. Below it was a designation Hale had seen only twice in sealed briefings. Instructor 0. Hale stopped breathing for a moment. As a young lieutenant, he had carried a pocket copy of Instructor 0's field doctrine. Its rules were plain, almost severe. Never trust a clean map more than the man standing on the ground. Never make a report easier by making a missing man disappear. No operator is expendable for the sake of a tidy record. Hale looked at his aide. Where is he? West Memorial Hall, sir. Stop the unveiling. The secretary's representative arrives in 15 minutes. Hale said his speech on the podium. Then he can wait. Back in the archive, Claire compared Walter's state identification with the sealed personnel photograph. The young man on the screen had darker hair, a heavier face, and the same pale eyes. The match returned above the verification threshold. Ethan stared at the designation beneath Walter's name. Instructor 0, he said. Walter looked at the screen without pride. The unit needed lessons before it needed a name. You wrote the doctrine? We all wrote it. I was the one who organized the pages. They still teach it. Then someone found it useful. A deep mechanical sound came from the West Hall doors. They opened. General Hale entered first. Behind him came the command sergeant major, 2 colonels, and a line of senior officers who had left the auditorium without waiting for an explanation. Their polished shoes struck the marble in a slow, measured rhythm. Walter remained beside the table. His jacket sleeve was bare. Hale saw him and stopped. The authority in the general's face gave way to recognition built from old photographs, sealed briefings, and stories told in rooms where no recording devices were permitted. Compass, Hale said. The old call sign passed through the hall like a key turning in a forgotten lock. Walter raised his eyes. It has been a long time, General. Hale came to attention. He raised his right hand in a precise salute. The command sergeant major followed. Then the colonels. Then every uniformed person in the hall. Ethan remained frozen beside the torn patch. Walter returned the salute. His arm moved slowly. His hand did not shake. When Hale lowered his arm, his gaze fell to the damaged cloth beneath Claire's lamp. Who removed that patch? Ethan stepped forward. I did, sir. Hale looked at him. Why? I believed it was counterfeit. And after Mr. Mercer warned you? I demanded proof. Hale reached to Ethan's shoulder and removed the modern Nightwatch crest. He placed it on the table beside Walter's patch. One was bright, symmetrical, and exact. The other was faded, uneven, and torn. Cadet Rourke, Hale said. The patch you wear was not issued to Mr. Mercer. Ethan stood rigid. No, sir. It was designed from his. The words carried through the hall. Hale pointed at the broken compass. He helped build the doctrine that created this command. He trained the officers who trained the officers standing behind me. Every time you recite the rule that no missing operator will be erased for operational convenience, you are repeating his words. Ethan's face lost color. Yes, sir. You accused him of stealing your history. Yes, sir. You were wearing his. Walter stepped forward before Hale continued. The cadet was protecting something he respects. Ethan looked at him in disbelief. Walter glanced at the torn seam. He did not understand that respect without patience becomes pride. Hale studied Walter. What do you want done? Walter could have asked for Ethan's dismissal. He could have requested a public apology. He could have demanded a place at the front of the ceremony, an official citation, or the restoration of every sealed line in his own record. Instead, he picked up Samuel Pike's tag. I want the 7th name read before the wall is unveiled. Hale nodded. By whom? Walter placed the tag into Ethan's open hand. The metal looked small against the white glove. By the man who tore the patch. Ethan stared down at the stamped letters. Samuel A. Pike. The man he had dismissed as an invention now felt heavier than any decoration he had ever pinned to his uniform. Walter returned to the brown envelope. One more thing. He removed the sealed letter Samuel had given him in the ring. The paper had yellowed. The front carried Margaret Pike's name and an address that had stopped existing decades earlier. I could not send it while the operation was classified, Walter said. After the order expired, I learned Margaret was still alive. I asked command to invite her today without telling her why. Hale turned toward his aide. Is she here? Second row, sir. For the first time that morning, Walter closed his eyes. The pain in his face lasted only a second. Then it was gone. 20 minutes later, the auditorium lights dimmed. The curtain remained closed over the memorial wall. The audience had expected a polished speech about 6 founders. Instead, General Hale walked to the podium without prepared remarks. Walter sat in the second row beside an 80-year-old woman wearing a dark blue coat. Margaret Pike had arrived believing she was attending a general heritage dedication. She knew Walter only as the man who had telephoned her 3 weeks earlier and asked whether she still remembered a brother named Samuel. She had answered with a silence that lasted almost a minute. Ethan stood alone at center stage. His uniform remained immaculate except for the empty space on his shoulder where the Nightwatch crest had been removed. He held Samuel's identification tag in both hands. Hundreds of officers, cadets, veterans, and family members waited. Ethan looked toward Walter. The old man gave him a small nod. Ethan stepped to the microphone. "This wall was prepared with 6 names," he said. "We were taught that those 6 men were the beginning of Nightwatch." His voice tightened. He looked at the tag. That record was incomplete. No one moved. Samuel Arthur Pike served before this command had a public name. He served before its insignia was standardized and before its history could be safely written. He was the radio operator who made the first team possible. He was one of 7 founding members. Margaret's hand rose to her mouth. Walter looked down. He allowed the moment to belong to her. Ethan continued. "This morning, I saw a patch that did not match the official record. I assumed the man wearing it was false." His breathing became audible through the microphone. "I was wrong. General Hale did not rescue him from the silence. Ethan had to stand inside it. I damaged that patch because I believed protecting history meant defending only what had already been written. Mr. Mercer showed me that history sometimes survives in the hands of the people official records failed." He turned toward the curtain. "Samuel Pike," he said clearly. "Founding member. Present in the legacy he left behind." General Hale pulled the release cord. The curtain opened. The broken compass appeared first. Around it were 7 silver stars. Beneath the emblem, 7 names shone against the black stone. Samuel Pike's name stood last. Not smaller. Not marked with an explanation. Not separated by an asterisk or a classified footnote. Equal in size, depth, and honor to every name above it. The audience rose. No command was given. Chairs moved softly across the floor as every uniformed man and woman came to attention. Margaret remained seated. Her eyes were fixed on her brother's name. Walter placed the identification tag into her hand. Her fingers closed around it. "He gave this to me before the extraction," Walter said. Margaret tried to speak, but no sound came. Walter opened Samuel's letter and placed it beside the tag. "He asked me to bring him home." Margaret looked at Walter. "You did." Walter shook his head. "I took too long." "You came." Those 2 words broke something open behind Walter's eyes. He did not cry. His shoulders lowered by a fraction, as if a weight he had carried for 56 years had finally been taken by another pair of hands. General Hale stood at the podium. "For decades," he said, "Nightwatch taught that no operator would be abandoned for the sake of a clean report. Today we acknowledge that our own history failed that standard." He looked toward Walter. "Mr. Mercer, please join us at the front." Walter remained seated. He shook his head once. Then he looked at Margaret. "Her brother's name is where it belongs. That is enough." Hale understood. He did not ask again. After the ceremony, the memorial hall emptied slowly. Officers who wanted to shake Walter's hand found reasons not to crowd him. Cadets stood farther from the wall than before, reading all 7 names instead of only the ones they recognized. Ethan found Walter near the archive table. He carried the faded patch in a preservation sleeve. The Academy textile specialist had repaired it with dark thread. The torn seam had been secured, but the damage had not been hidden. A narrow, uneven line remained beneath the 7th star. "They offered to make the repair invisible," Ethan said. Walter examined it. "Why did you stop them?" Ethan lowered his eyes. "Because pretending it was never torn would be another false record." Walter removed the patch from the sleeve. Ethan waited. "I was wrong," the cadet said. "Not only about you. I was wrong about what it means to protect something." Walter held the patch against the empty sleeve of his jacket. Ethan carefully fastened it in place. His fingers were steady until he reached the repaired seam. Then they trembled. "I am sorry, sir." Walter looked toward the memorial. Late afternoon light moved across the 7 names. "My apology is not the one that matters." Ethan followed his gaze to Samuel Pike. "I understand. Do you?" Ethan considered the question. Then he removed Samuel's name from the ceremony card he had carried in his pocket. He folded the card carefully and placed it behind his modern crest. "I will." Walter gave a small nod. General Hale approached carrying Ethan's patch. The modern emblem no longer had 6 stars. The Heritage team had added a temporary 7th in silver thread until a new official crest could be produced. Hale handed it back to Ethan. "We're the complete history." Ethan secured it to his shoulder. Walter looked at the 2 patches. One old, one new, both carrying 7 stars. They walked toward the exit together. The young cadet stayed half a step behind the old veteran. Outside, the winter wind moved through the flag line. Fabric snapped once against the cold air, sharp and clean. Walter stopped beneath the colors and looked back through the glass doors. Samuel's name remained visible on the black wall. For the first time in 56 years, Walter did not need to count twice. A patch can fade. A record can fail. But a debt of honor remains until someone has the courage to remember.